All right, everybody, welcome back to On Cycle. As always, I am your host, Michael.
I'm your other host, Robbie.
All right, we're here today, and we're getting into, since the drum corps season is getting ready to get started, as of tonight, the night we're recording, which is Tuesday, the very first DCI show is getting ready to go out onto the field. Everybody's super excited about it. Flow Marching's got something going on Wednesday, which I'm sure if you're watching this episode, you've already seen it. So what we really wanted to do was, as all these shows are being developed and they're being broadcast and all these things are going on, how exactly does a drum corps show get born? How does it come into existence? All right, Robbie and I had this question, and we're like, who better to ask than the guy, the gentleman, the sir, who has been developing and kind of a major part of that idea and that giving birth to a show than our good friend Nicholas Tavares.
Ah, you said my full name too.
Yes,
All
I
right,
did.
all right.
Yeah.
The government name, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
Nervous to be here. Surprisingly,
Yeah.
extrovert by every means necessary,
Correct.
except
Yep.
when I actually have to do it in a produced kind of a way.
That's
so.
okay.
Yeah.
You have no reason
The
to.
big lights.
Correct.
Make you feel so
Correct.
official. You're like,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
oh,
right.
you're on best behavior.
I have to have good posture.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
right.
Present yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. So welcome, obviously, and we're really excited to talk to you. For those of you who don't know Nick, some of you probably do. Nick has a long history in drum corps. As you can see behind him, he's a former Cavalier. What year did you march Cavaliers?
2000.
2000. So a champion, DCI champion.
Pretty good year.
And
yeah.
great year to be part of. That's the only year you marched?
Yeah, sadly.
All right, and then he's moved on through, been pretty much part of drum corps and indoor guard for since then. So why don't you just take a moment and kind of, I don't know, give us the whole
Way back
resume.
when I was a wee lad. No, I mean, in all honesty, I grew up in the activity kind of unconventionally. Like my parents met through drum corps.
Oh, okay.
They were a product of 70s drum corps. They met each other in a little known Rhode Island drum corps called the Cranston Regal Crownsmen.
Wow. Okay.
Correct. My mom was in color guard. My dad was a baritone player. So Robbie's got a little connection there with my dad there.
Yeah.
And it's not anything that I necessarily kind of grew up with. I always saw like their group shot picture. It was posted in our dining room. Saw that. Never really paid it any mind until I kind of went to high school. Was kind of looking for a group, a niche, some kind of a group to find my calling in.
Sure.
I had transferred school for the first time. I was in public school for the first time ever. And I met a girl who was in color guard in my high school marching band. And in the Mid-Atlantic, if you were in high school, then you may have done marching band in the area because it was a huge thing in this area.
Right.
Not so much in the New England. I'm from Rhode Island originally, so not really a big thing up there. So when I came here, it was a completely new world. But my mom was like, "Oh, well, you were born into it, so it's natural that you flock to that."
Sure.
So kind of got started in my high school marching band. Pretty big deal in our area, our circuit, and from there I met some great people that were involved in drum corps. A friend of mine asked me to go out to a Jersey surf camp for the summer of '98.
Nice.
I did, met some people there, got involved with an independent winter guard, and just kind of took off from there. I was involved with Apex Winter Guard from 1999 until 2008. Local color guard from Delaware. Independent A, went to Open, went to World eventually, won a bronze medal in WGI at one point.
Nice.
And then I went on and marched Cavaliers in the summer of 2000. It was just a fluke thing that I was like, hey, I'm going to go march drum corps, and this is what I'm going to do. But back in the day, I was a die-hard Cadets fan.
Okay.
Die-hard Cadets fan. I
Interesting.
swore I was in the 1996 Cadets color guard. Swore it. And I was going to go there until, a mentor of mine was like, do you want to go there and have a really rough summer? With the old school cadets mentality.
Sure.
Or do you want to go somewhere where you're going to have a great experience?
Right.
So I was like, I'm going to go audition at both. I ended up going to Cavaliers Thanksgiving weekend, got a spot, one of the few rookies that were offered a spot at that Thanksgiving camp.
Yeah.
And then I decided I wasn't going to go to cadets camp. So
Wow.
that's my story.
And crazy enough, if you had gone either way, you would have won either way.
Correct.
Yeah.
However, like
Two
we had,
powerhouse shows.
Yeah.
and we had zero idea all summer
Yeah.
of what we were working with. No idea. Wasn't expected at all to end the way it did. We just were there having a good time, working hard. And
I remember watching that show and that season, moving up into there and just watching you guys get better and better and better every single weekend. I was like, oh, okay. We're climbing.
we had zero idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Such a great show. It's the show that made me fall in love with cadets or with Cavalier. Cavaliers.
Mm-hmm.
So it is. It 100% is. And my best friend went on the march there. I've said a few times in the show in 02, and I wanted to go there all myself, and then I ended up going to cadets, which is kind of the opposite of where you were. But that's awesome. So a lot of indoor stuff. A lot of there's your DCI time. When did you get more involved with the all age activity or DCA back then?
So I have known about the Reading Buccaneers and DCA like all through high school. Like I had friends that had gone through Buccaneers specifically. A couple friends that have marched Bushwhackers through the years, and I came back from tour the summer of 2000, and a couple friends of mine were marching Reading in summer 2000. So we went to a show. I was back home for a week, and then I was at a drum corps show that next weekend. And I saw it. I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of legit. All right, neat. Didn't really give it much of a thought until around the 05, 06, 07 era, where I had a lot of friends in the color guard marching that year, and they were like, come fill a hole, come fill a hole. I'm like, I like my summer, I'm good. And then 09, I finally made the switch and came over, and I was supposed to be a one and done.
Yeah.
I was supposed to march summer of 2009, and I was going to quell my DCA itch, and then I was going to be good. And here I am.
Here you are. 13 seasons later,
14, 13, I don't know.
Whatever. Like the chains around your neck, they tell the tale.
It's heavy.
Exactly. Story.
So you've been involved. So when was the last year you marched with the Bucks?
My final year marching was 2011. So I did 09, 10, and 11.
Okay. So all good years.
Started as tech staff in 2012, so 12, 13, 14, and then 15 took over as captain of the color guard. Did that all the way through the COVID years too.
Oh yeah.
I count 2020 as a season. I had already started working on designing that show, so I count that as a season. And 2022, when we came back, that's when I assumed the role of the artistic coordinator. And then I took a step back from being the captain of the color guard, and just started focusing on the artistic production of the program and just really helping to support all of the sections in the drum corps to kind of fully realize the artistic direction of the program.
Yeah, which is great. And I came back to the Bucks in 22, and Robbie's been here since 15. So I know, watching the style change from what it was 15 through 19 now into what it is, I really enjoy it personally.
Thanks.
Being a part of
I like it.
It's very fun to be a part of.
It is. It's a lot of fun to be a part of. Which is, again, so that's your official title is
artistic coordinator.
So that kind of like brings us to kind of the meat and potatoes of this conversation we wanted to have, which is, kind of how a drum corps show is born. Where do the ideas come from? How many people make up those beginning concepts, and where do all that stuff come from? So maybe let's just start with a time frame. Like when do you start thinking about next year? Right.
Today.
Yeah.
Well, and so I'm a person that is, I'm a creator and a designer by what inspires me, whatever around me. Like I find inspiration and I find idea in anything around me. I joked with Paul, our ensemble coordinator. He had said a phrase at our spring preview alumni spectacular night that I jotted down on my notes app, and I'm going to revisit it for next year as a show idea. I'm not going to share that because
that's okay. We're going to say no. Of course, you got to.
It has nothing to do with space pirates. So
come on.
Well, then what's the point?
Yeah, we don't care. It's not.
No, and I was kind of sharing with you guys both on Sunday. Like I just saw something in the landscape at our rehearsal facility this past weekend that really kind of just made me tilt my head a little bit and kind of look at it differently. And I took a picture of it, and it may be something that I go back to look at for inspiration for something along the way. I don't know. I get inspired by things that are interesting and cool, and have some kind of a story to tell, or have some kind of a neat idea that we can play with and we can make something out of and create something out of.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So it sounds like, the understandable process, inspiration from all around is constantly sort of coming in. You're always thinking about like what, for next year. So I'm then curious, when we're talking about birth of a show, right? When is that like, when is that point that's like, it goes from just ideas to like, this is the concept that we're doing, right? When is that sort of like decided, and kind of like, how is it decided? What's that process like?
So this year kind of got a little bit of a late start. I think we were about 2 weeks behind what we normally are. I think we met in early October this year, really just kind of blue sky and hash out our ideas. I usually come to the table with one or two things that I'm kind of really sitting with, which just so happens for the last 3 years have been something that have materialized into
Right.
our productions.
Mhm.
And I throw it out there, and I kind of like to see what other people bring to the table.
Mm.
And I think that's what is really interesting and special about our design team that is in place currently with the Reading Buccaneers is there's not just one person making a decision or saying this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, this is the music we're going to play. It's the group of us that get together, and I throw it out there and I say, this is what I'm envisioning. This is the idea that I'm kind of going with. Anybody else feeling anything with it?
Right.
And then people, again, blue skying the idea and throwing it out there and just saying, what if we do this? What if we do this? What if we do this? How about this? I could see this with this. You know, we all get inspired in different ways. I am largely a visual person.
Mm.
I do not have a music background aside from being involved in the marching arts. And I rely on other people to bring the music piece of the puzzle, you know, to the table. There are pieces out there that I love and that I have visions with and that I would love to see a part of the program. And, you know, they've made their way into shows before. In fact, 22
I was
started
about to
off
say.
with that cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit that I was watching Black Widow, and it
Mhm.
was the opening credits of Black Widow. And I was like, this is a show and I'm going to roll with it. And that's how it came with. And I said, this must be in the show in order for this to work.
Yeah.
And you know, that's where Paul comes in. That's where, that's where this year Travis came in with it. That's where Tanzos comes in with it. You know, they bring their musical expertise and ideas, you know, to the table, and we start to hash things out with that.
Right. So there's a multitude of people, obviously.
Yeah.
What's the, I mean, honest, it's probably not an exact size, but like who are the, not who, but like how many core people are there in the room kind of making the choice of this is what we're going to do for this year before we start ironing out all the details?
Lead designers, I guess.
Yeah, that's myself and our ensemble coordinator, Paul, our drill designer, Steve, our visual caption head, our brass caption head, color guard caption head, percussion caption head.
Okay.
So all of the caption heads,
Okay.
we throw out the idea that we are just caption heads and designers.
Sure.
You know, all on the same plate.
Does that happen with other groups? Do you know? Or like you've been a part of, designing indoor shows for years, obviously too, and being part of those things. Is it the same general process, or is that kind of unique to what we're doing?
Yeah.
It's kind of what
Fair, at least.
it's kind of what I've embraced in my experiences. Just coming off of working with a really successful, marching arts program in Delaware, like I took what I was learning here at Reading, being a part of the previous design team, and that's ultimately how we built our programs, was just the experiences that I had here.
Yeah.
Very similar approach, very similar aesthetic, very similar mentality with how we put everything together.
Yeah, that's got to be. That to me seems like the most productive way of doing it. You know what I mean? Because you give everybody a little bit of a taste of what
a
part
stake
of that.
in the prize.
Exactly. So that way they can be invested in it as much as anybody else is.
And also then they get to sort of lend their expertise.
Absolutely.
Like you said, you're more of a visual guy, right? You're more of a big like patterns, ideas, bringing in, what does the visual product look like? The ensemble coordinator and the brass caption head get to bring more of like the melodic music part, right? Someone like the percussion caption head gets to bring more of that soundscape or, backbone beat to it. It's as a beloved staff coordinator would say, synergy.
Correct.
With the design process.
I mean, I am very moved by music. I'm very reluctant to put pen to paper when it comes to designing the uniforms or designing the look and the aesthetic until I start to hear what's coming and what's being produced too, because I get very affected by, the musical selections and where it's being driven. In fact, last year's production, I didn't really have a clear idea of what Can't Stop, Won't Stop was going to look like until I heard the opener. And then in turn, I got the opener. I had taken a trip to New York, for a day trip of meandering around and taking in the sights. And that's where I came up with the entire design concept visually for the program last year, was after getting that opener of the music and really solidifying and settling in on the idea of what I wanted the program to look like.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I honestly, that perfectly transitions into one of my questions, because I've been thinking a little bit about these last couple of years. We at Bucks, and I think a lot of drum corps just in general, have taken to finding a color palette as like a core part of their show theme, right? very I think very strong this year from what we have in rehearsal seen on the field, right? Very loud last year, and very, a very distinct and different sort of color palette in 22. So can you talk a little more just on like, I love the color concept, right? Can you talk a little more on like, where you pull those colors from and how you decide like this is going to be our palette for the year?
True.
Yeah, because we're just
I love
we're just dumb marchers. We don't
Mhm.
like for me, I'm not creative enough
Yeah.
to be in the mental
Yeah.
space to be able to understand that. I could kind of like you with music a little bit. Like I could see once you show it to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is
Yeah.
awesome. I can totally get it.
We had the
you
color
know?
palette for this year. I'm like, ooh, cool,
yeah,
and
exactly.
pretty,
And I'm
we
like,
see
I
Blue
can't see it.
Devils color palette for this year. I saw that and I was like, ooh,
Yeah, of which I feel very honored that we have somewhat of a little bit of a similar aesthetic.
We
Yeah,
do.
I'll
We
go
do.
with
I
it.
remember they came out and like they're doing the mask too. I hope. It's a good thing we announced our show
Correct.
first, because
Put it out
otherwise
there.
we would get accusations.
The blue team.
Yeah.
Well, coming out of COVID, one of the biggest things coming out of COVID with having a new design team in place, one of the things that we wanted to do was really just stake our claim and make the Reading Buccaneers look different.
Mm.
One of the biggest mentors and most important people in my life from learning this activity from a visual end of it, one of his favorite mottos was always being fashion forward. And that's something that I've really taken to heart. Like I always want us to look on the cutting edge. I always want us to look on trend. I always want us to look like we are a modern day drum and bugle corps.
Right.
Even being in the all age division, like I still want us to be a viable candidate to be like, they're changing things. I like that. So when we were coming out of 2002, it was really important for us to restake our claim of our identity, but also to change that claim, which is why that uniform was a double-sided uniform. We really wanted to make sure that we harked to our traditions of being classically driven, of being very proper and very sophisticated looking, just from a crisp, clean, and sharp look to breaking it down and just really looking like a dirty pirate.
Right.
Which was the aesthetic that I was going for with our program Altered Ego. I wanted to show a complete juxtaposition of two different worlds of what the Reading Buccaneers have been and what we can be.
Right.
Don't just think that we're not going to do anything that's, classically music driven, which was our identity for the longest time.
Yeah.
We're going to then turn it on its edge and go into some 80s or 90s grunge.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of the inspiration for that.
It was super fun. As long as I was part of the Bucks, it was always classic. It was 25 years of it, it's just, which is great. And I love being a part of that, but also
there's so much repertoire to choose from.
There's so much cool stuff. And I've been appreciating the musical selections the last few years because they're more interesting to play. There's a lot more fun to have with it.
You're missing the key word. Entertaining.
Yeah.
Like that's another piece is that we want our programs to be entertaining. Like we want the bus driver to come into the stadium and be like, that was a really cool show.
Yeah.
And that's, and we shifted a little bit. Like we learned from a design team, 2002, we were learning each other. 22, we were learning each other, learning how we worked, how our aesthetics melded together. We learned a lot of lessons coming out of that summer.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things was we're working way too hard to tell stories that don't need to be told. We just need to have a fun aesthetic. We just need to put an entertaining program out there where anybody can find something in and be like, that was neat. That was cool. That was interesting.
Yeah.
And that was last year. In fact, last year's idea came out from me reprimanding, a teacher in my day job. They were running through the hallways. They were getting stuff done. They were hustling bus. I was like, yo, slow down. They're like, sorry, can't stop. Won't stop, Nick. And I was like, oh, that's a show idea. Yeah, exactly. I jotted it down on my notes app on my phone. And, I went from there. I'm like, what does this look like? And I'm like, I want to do a show that does not stop from the start to the walking out. In fact, one of the early ideas was we were literally going to ending impact the show as we were leaving the stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't work that out logistically. And, we wanted to have that moment where people could appreciate the program and, applaud. It was just a matter of, okay, what else can we do to make this look crazy? Like, what can we do to make this entertaining? And I'm glad you mentioned like visual chaos last year, because that was my inspiration.
Okay.
Just kind of going visual chaos.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I also, as a personal note on personal design, I love a good show that the show theme is kind of just a vibe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. It's just an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my favorite shows is Crown 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what that show's about.
Nope.
Something about patterns in nature and maybe math. I don't care. Like the feel of it is awesome and the music fits together, right? Tilt is extremely famous. All it is a visual idea and a bunch of really cool music that fits together, right? And sometimes that's all you need, right?
Correct.
You know, you can, and I think the cool thing about that and having a cohesive vibe is that people can find whatever through line and story idea they want to through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are still valid interpretations.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. People can just enjoy the parts that they want to enjoy out of it without having to be like a psychology major.
Yep.
You know, that
you don't have to get a
understands-
look right out to
Yeah.
understand it. But you hit the nail on the head because we spent a lot of time defining the story and getting it told in that year coming out of COVID that we're like, we don't have the time for that, you know, mood and aesthetic were the two words that I used. I said, I just want to create a mood on the field. I just want to create a vibe and I just want us to have fun with it. And I want the performers to look like they're having the time of their lives, and I want the audience to see that, appreciate that, and then also buy into that with us. Kind of breaking down that fourth wall piece, you know, which I was kind of just referencing, you know, if I should be talking to the audience. You know, breaking down that fourth wall is so very important to me because that's what I find valuable when I find that cheeky piece of a drum corps show where I'm like, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
I got you. That was fun.
Yep.
You got to me. I like that. You know, and that's what we wanted to kind of get with that starting last year with that, with the show that we produced. And then it kind of just rolled into this year with the same mood and the aesthetic and just kind of taking, you know, what was important and valuable with last year's program and making it that much more sophisticated with a little hint of intellectual with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely feel that.
Yeah, I feel
That
like
idea.
drum corps in general is kind of moving, I'll call it backwards towards that because like the feeling, that vibe feeling that Robbie was just talking about, that feels to me very like 80s, 90s, even early
little bit.
2000s drum corps. It's just because I think everybody got so like, we have to tell this wild story and it
Correct.
has to be, you know, like we're talking about the mind and inside the body. And like, and so it's so,
And there were a lot of very
Yeah.
cool and successful storyline shows.
yeah, and a lot of really bad ones that people were just like, we
Yeah.
have no idea what's going on right now, and it's you're trying to connect with the audience member on a level that you need to know so much information in order to be able to understand it. Where now is you can just feel what's coming off the field, and I like that personally a lot better from any show that's going on out there right now.
I like the show. I like the type of show that is approachable, but also has that one little something in there. Like, what does that even mean? And then you Google it and you're like, I have so much more appreciation for that show.
Sure.
You know, it's
That's
like
why you like Blue Devil shows.
It is. It's actually why I like Blue Knights too for all those years as well.
Yeah.
Like all the years, like the years that you and Lydia were there, like I just really loved the deepness of that program, but I could also just appreciate it from a really pretty, sparkly show.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
Overly
really,
sparkly.
it was just really fun to watch, and it was just well performed. But it had a little something extra that made you have to go a little bit deeper into it too. But yes, I do love the Blue Devils. I'm glad you brought that up,
Yeah.
Mr.
We're
Lord.
not going to talk about the Blue Devils in this.
We can't.
Listen, here's what I will say to you, because, and I don't know if I said this to you yet or not, and I watched like their preview from a couple weeks ago, not their official one from 2 nights ago, whatever it was. I really like the show this year, probably the first 5 to 6 minutes, then it goes back into old school Blue Devils mode. And I think I posted it online someplace. I'm like, this will be the year that they don't win
Because you like it.
because I like the show, because I think it's actually entertaining. And I think it's not because it's actually entertaining. It's entertaining every year, but because it's entertaining in a different way, away from what the Blue Devils always do, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more interesting. I think it's with more depth to the concept. You know, there's more stuff going on, but it's not so high level that I need to like understand shapes and colors and like you know, like you said, I don't mind doing that too, like going out and figuring out a little bit more about what the show concept is, but I think it gets too deep sometimes for me, and I go, that's too much for me. Sometimes I just want you to play loud and spin flags, and I just want to see some cool stuff going on.
I think the reason why I have grown to appreciate them so much more being on the design side of things,
Sure.
because they are the quintessential performer.
Yeah.
Like you cannot like they're almost superhero like in the way that they approach the program and the way they perform it. Like you have all of the faith in the world that they're going to perform for you.
Right.
And that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
You know, like I equate it to a Broadway show. Like you go to like that is their job and that is how they perform. Like it is their job to entertain you.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. Like I want to be them. And to me, that's the mark of a great program.
Yeah.
You know, when I watch a program, like, you know what, I want to be them when I grow up in my 43 years.
Yeah.
On this earth. You know, I couldn't imagine doing some of the things that performers are doing now in the world class drum corps and, you know, Winter Guard world. I couldn't imagine doing that stuff. I didn't have to do that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, marching in world class programs, you know, but to watch these performers achieve that and I want to be them, like that's the mark of a truly great performer.
Yeah.
And that's why I adore them. And that's why I have such mad respect for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Robbie and I talk about this, you know, all the time too. Like we listen to some of the books that they come out with, and I just go, I don't even understand how you're doing that right now. That is unbelievable. What you're being asked to do from a physical standpoint, and what you're being asked to do from a musical standpoint, and you're achieving it at such a high level. Like, I don't even know that I could have done that 20 years ago when I was still young and probably capable. I mean, you probably could have beaten me into it because that's what they did, you know, back then. And just kind of
the olden days,
the good old days where they just made you do it because that's what the only thing you were supposed to do.
Where you ran when they were tired.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm tired. Go run.
Go run.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Go find the answer. It's on a leaf on that tree.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's not it.
No, not that leaf. Go find a different leaf. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So all of that being said, right, and trying to come up with that idea, right, that the thing that's going to be synergetic to this audience and to the member, and it's going to captivate as many people as you can. At what point does it solidify to you're just like, okay, we can't make any more changes, or this isn't working, or this is working, or, you know, at what point does it go back and forth and you just go, we got to stay here, or this is definitely what we're going with, and just have faith that it's going to work and go from there?
I don't think that ever truly comes to fruition. And I say that tongue in cheek because it does. Like we are in the midst right now of making those final thoughts and tweaks and changes for this year's production, because the reality is that we've got one more camp weekend left to solidify what our program is, you know. So right now we're in the midst of finalizing those final details and ideas, but I mean, you guys as performers know things are tweaking and changing even on finals morning. You know, so things are never truly done. And then I go back and watch it 2 months after that final performance, and I'm like, could have done that different. I want to do that different. Or you go back 5 years later, 10 years later, and you're like, why didn't anybody think to make this transition like that? You know, and it's a constantly evolving process. And I love to use the idea organic. You know, it has to evolve organically. It has to come naturally, visually. Like, you know, when we were putting together, you know, the opening sequence of the program this year, it had to happen organically. Yeah, there's a thought process. There's a bulleted list of, you know, count structures and, you know, who's going to take the focus and who's going to do what, but it has to organically grow. Like you got to see it live and in person to fully understand like what it is. Just because UDB is telling you can do it, doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it's going to be. You got to see what the performers are able to successfully achieve, and no better way than to actually have the performers do it. Make those tweaks.
It reminds me of the famous quote. Have you ever heard it? Where it's art is never finished, only abandoned.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very much so.
So let me ask you this question, because this is like a DCI versus all age kind of question.
Yikes.
Obviously, because I agree with you as far as the organic process of it. It makes the most sense. I feel like DCI, your all age, or not your all age, your world class kids that are going on tour, they have the advantage of being able to make tweaks constantly, right? All day, every single day, right? For us in the all age activity, it's more difficult. So how do you decide how much time to spend on this or that, or this is good enough, or is there more? Because I feel like if I was on staff on a DCI world class, where I just walk out one day and be like, we're going to try this today, guys, and if it doesn't work, okay, we'll try something different tomorrow, right? Because we have so much time, you know, comparatively speaking. So at what point, and who kind of figures all that out for you guys as a design team? like where that goes and how much more you're going to put into it.
Again, we all have stake in that decision-making process, because something that I think is great may not be something that's functional on the music side of it. And we're kind of going through a little bit of that right now with, hashing out this one idea in, this year's production in our ballad. I love where it's at visually, but is it what it needs to be musically? So we kind of hash out like, best idea wins,
Sure,
like
right,
what
right.
is going to be, what's the most effective, what's going to be the easiest to produce, what's going to get us there from an effect standpoint, but then also it's got to be performed well too.
Sure, right.
So, what's the timeline for the performer in order to get that? Is this going to tax the performer to where it's not worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze in the end? So we just have to, we have to be honest with ourselves in those moments, check the ego at the, 3 doors down, and really assess where we're at with the reality of what we're facing. Because you're right, like it would be great to go out and be like, we're just going to try this,
Right.
and then after a 3-hour block, if it doesn't work, we're like, just go back to what you did before. We don't have that luxury of wasting a 3-hour block to do that.
Right.
And, that's why so much of what we do is communication during the week. I'm going from, recording with you guys in the car to probably a meeting, to chat about, what our goals are going to be for this weekend, only to have multiple conversations throughout the week, one-on-one offline, to hash out those plans, so it's an ever-going, ever-growing organic process behind the scenes as well.
Right. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing, I think, because we have a lot of listeners that are starting to come in from the DCI regular world, and most of our listeners have been DCI all age up to this point, and we have a couple new people. And for people who haven't experienced the all age activity, that's a very difficult process. It's difficult for the members because we want to absorb and we want to give you guys what you're looking for as best and as frequently as we can. What we're trying to cram, 10 pounds of whatever into a 5-pound bag. So it is a difficult task. So I can again say from an appreciation standpoint, is like we love attempting, but we also love, when it comes in
realistically.
Like this is what we're doing. Okay, great. And then it just stays, because sometimes just staying and not moving it is probably the most effective thing to do from a performer standpoint, trying to figure out how to get all this done with us trying to, again, we're only coming in on the weekends to do it.
Yeah.
But also realistically, like we've got, what's our youngest member? 16, 15?
I think 15.
15.
I think it's a 15.
What's our oldest member?
Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jim gets me by,
Sorry, yeah,
he gets me by
Jim's
one.
bad.
I'm number 2 this year.
Like
49.
You have to take that spectrum and also realize too, it's like you've got people that are in their golden ages of drum corps.
Yes.
And I can
Correct.
say that as a golden age member of the drum corps, with people that may or may not have any idea what they're doing.
Right.
They're coming out with 2 left shoes on their feet. It's like, now go ahead and dance.
Right.
We have to realistically understand and meet in the middle somehow there. Like, do we train people to, to achieve what we want to do in there too, but also realistically understand that, they're not going to get that. We got to make sure that we are giving the performer something that, number one, they're comfortable with, they're going to look good doing, and they're going to be successful with it down the road.
Yeah. You should talk to Steve about, the old person thing and be like, hey man, could you maybe calm down a little bit? I'm just kidding. No.
I swear we said that we weren't going to run for 4 minutes in the closer at 200 because we just didn't have the time constraints.
We're pretty
And
close to
we're
that.
doing that for about 3.5.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So it's not 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. At least you did keep to your word. Yeah.
We've got, I'm not going to throw any shade in particular, but if you watch some world-class cores, we're moving more than them in terms of, I'm not saying now, not saying that we're necessarily achieving it at the same level. I think we're achieving it pretty darn well, but like we are being demanded to move more than a lot of top world-class cores in terms of marching and playing fast at the same time.
I have been involved with this drum corps since 2009. And every time we venture on off to watch DCI drum corps, we walk away saying, we are working way too hard.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Like it's only been 17 years, guys. Maybe just tone it back a little bit. Now, honestly, I think it's way more toned back than it was even 5 or 6 years ago.
That's because the activity has evolved and
Correct.
it's changed.
Yeah.
Now it's more reliant on staging and creating moments and creating organic shapes and stages and utilizing props as stages and to create something different looking. It's not so much, we're not Z pulling around, we're not diamond cutting, around. Look, I just referenced both of our drum corps.
Yeah.
There are great effect moments being derived from drill, but I think the activity has evolved to where it's like, okay, we can create effect visually in a myriad of ways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily just, okay, you need to run fast and you need to, cover 5 to 5 and run on a fast clip in order to make something special and interesting.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. Although I will say, I think,
However, that is
as
cool
someone,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you come from the greatest, era, I think, of drill design
of
in the
running
Cavaliers. Oh my God. There's
geometric drill.
yeah, those
right?
shows are incredible.
It was extremely hard to learn.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, like even 24 years later.
Yeah.
Like, it was hard to learn. That's
Yeah.
why I am a true believer in dot over form.
Yep.
Oh, you see,
Dot over
those
form.
of us listening
My
out there,
man, dot over form anyway.
I have to tell you,
Tell
if I-
Lou.
yeah,
Where's
pick a
Lou?
side.
I know you're listening to this, Lou.
pick a side. I'm going to
Dot
pick that
over
side as
form.
well.
Yeah, it works every time. Individual
Let's say.
responsibility.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Individual
You
responsibility.
can get in the comments and get angry at us if you want.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Lou. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I would say, honestly, as someone who's, I guess I've been around for every show in the, what I would call the new era. For Buccaneers, it's basically post 2017. For those of you, a little history, we sort of, Bucks tends to go through big phases.
We
They
do.
did in the 2010s where, we would have a lot of shows in a certain genre of design or a certain age of design, and we would have one really, really good show that personifies that age of design. That was 2017, I think, for us. Just the ultimate, just a few moments of pretty snappy choreo, but mostly just running gun the whole time.
Mhm.
And I've been around for every year after that where we've, took a toe more into the choreography thing. And I do think, from my perspective, at least in the feeling this year and last year sort of have both been almost like going back towards that balance where we still have to do so much choreography and more choreography than ever. But we still have a lot of, like I said, we're moving and playing and marching and playing so much during the show.
Yeah,
There's so many cool moments during the show that are achieved by marching, by marching design.
Yeah.
And it's cool. I think and I hope more corps are leaning towards that, because I think personally, especially as a person who loves drill, I think in the recent 2 years, the drill design stuff has, I think, taken a little bit of a hit. Not in the fact that there's less of it. I'm okay with there being less of it, but it's the stuff that they do. It's I don't think it's quite being achieved at the level that we could be achieving it at, right? I am so all for the bring in more choreography stuff. I'm sure you know that, seeing me on the field. I love dance and movement and new kinds of movement too, but I'm always in the camp. It's why can't we, have both, right? Why can't we, let's bring more and more choreography in, but let's keep those cool drill moments and let's demand that we achieve them at the same exact level we can, that we did before. Even if it's not realistic, why not demand that
Yeah,
of
and
ourselves?
I think that comes from us just having reasonable expectations about what we can achieve.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you still want to have a great drum corps show on a finals video. You still want to be able to be there we go, that hit.
Yeah.
And in recognizing and realizing where the activity has evolved from, you got to have the happy balance. You know what I mean? You got to have that ballad where you're taking a lot of time off and it's just staging driven, and you're posing and you're creating clumps and layers and heights, and maybe you have a fun little drill moment in that moment, and so that you can gear yourself up for a fast-paced closer.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of where it's kind of been the motivation between the last 2 years, the Reading Buccaneers with, as far as the drill and the visual design. It's been, hey, let's make the ballad just interesting moments that we create, so we can, throw it back in your face in the closer.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That was kind of my question. It was a little bit, is there a conversation of we're going to do this much choreo and this much drill, or the balance is going to be 60-40, 70-30 kind of, or we're going to move away from all of this, or we're going to move towards more of this? Is that something that's talked about earlier before like drill is starting to be written?
Yeah. I hate to keep using this word, but it's organic in how that develops, because we all come to the table with our own perspective of what we want to see in these moments.
Right.
You know, and then we relinquish it to our visual caption head, who, you know, she then has a different vision and a different feel for what it should look like to her and what she wants to see the performers doing, you know, but then we see it and we're like, ooh, that's a pass through for an entire section that needs to get in these aisleways. We need to thin that out a lot, you know, and so that that moment can happen, not at the sacrifice of this choreography moment, you know, but in order to truly maximize the intent of the drill move in there too.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes it's trying things and seeing if they can work.
Right.
And then making those edits and those adjustments to actually make it work.
Right.
Because you got to look at the big picture. You know, you got to see, you know, there are too many elements battling, you know, in those moments. Like, how do we thin that out and how do we make it look different?
Yeah. I think that's a really important, I think it's an important thing for young people in the activity to understand. It's part of another reason why I wanted to have you kind of like come on and talk through the process. Cause you know, you hear grumbles, like everybody complains because it's drum corps. That's what we do sometimes because it's hot and it sucks.
It's always
But
tough.
you know, but we always go through
Complaining?
and we go, I know, right? Nobody does that.
Complaining?
Who would do that? Right.
Never.
Oh my gosh.
But there's so many people that go, I don't understand why they did this, or why is this here? Or this doesn't make any sense. And people get frustrated by it and they go, listen, everything is thought through. Every single thing is thought through. Is it perfect? Probably not, right? Because we're making organic changes as time goes on, right? Number one. And sometimes it's we really want this idea to make sense and happen, but we have to connect all these other ideas to make sense and make happen. And it's putting all these pieces together. And that, you know, obviously if it's not going to work and, you know, we see that you guys see that it's not working, that they're going to make that change. Right. And I always think that's something I know from my perspective, being as many years as I've marched and performed and all the things that I've done. I have my own gripes and complaints from time to time here and there, but most of the time, that's correct. Okay, me, I do.
And believe it or not,
believe it or not, I'm opinionated. But I also do spend a lot of time talking to people and going, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know, look, guys, it's fine. We're going to figure this out. If it looks that bad, that long, or I understand that this particular drill move isn't working right now. Do you guys understand that there are 20 other drill moves happening right now that need more attention than our little whatever nonsense that's going on? And we get very center focused on, I can't make this set. This person's running into me. This is really dangerous. This is what it is. Okay, cool. You know, you make it work for the time you can. And then when it starts to fall apart, then somebody sees it and they come over and they fix it.
Yeah, the safety is key.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like, but did you die?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, are you gonna be fine? Like, we don't have the time to hash this out today.
You're right.
You know, we have a mere 10 minutes in order to, you know, fix this part. Are you gonna die?
Yeah.
No? Okay, cool. Then we'll cover that tomorrow. Better yet, next week.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it work.
Yeah.
You know, listen, sometimes throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if it sticks works.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't. Like, and I chatted about it, earlier on, you know, like, you got to make the reasonable change for the reasonable expectation of those moments and how they need to work.
Right.
Yeah. I also think it you know, everyone, including members and staff, are all adjusting to the new way of doing things and the new process. You know, we always throw out the trust the process word,
I was just going to say trust the process.
Right. But it's interesting also when you're like, well, the process keeps changing, right? Because the design, you know, part keeps changing. I thought it was really interesting being able to see, you know, at least at Buck's perspective, and I'm sure a lot of other people who have been at other drum corps where they have some years where the show doesn't quite work the way it does, and then some years where it does click, and you know, be able to see the behind the scenes process of that. I remember seeing a remarkable difference and feeling a remarkable difference between, like, say, you know, 22 and 23, right? Whereas as you kind of said, basically the whole design team was new to their position.
We were excited.
22.
We were excited.
And it was, and we made a lot of cool stuff happen, but we could see, like, you know, that was one of the first years that we tried out some really big staging blocks.
Yes.
Where we would
sometimes
literally staging blocks. Yes. But also like a whole block of just like, let's figure this thing out. And I remember frustrations from both staff and membership.
Don't bring up the day. Don't bring up the day.
Yeah, I won't.
Don't bring up the day.
Where a certain t-shirt was tragically lost. But I remember
It was not me, by the way.
Yeah,
It was not me.
I remember very curiously, like, and eventually that worked out, and I remember being a very cool moment by the end of it. But it was such like a, oh man, this process has to be organic now. How the heck do we do that? How do we figure something out organically? Because even when it's organic, there's oftentimes a process and there's like best practices. I remember the stark difference of that and figuring out the pre-show in 23, and we had a block. And Steve Rinda, our drill designer, was like, you go here. And we just kept saying numbers and And then we tried it and we're like, oh, that worked.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're just like, oh.
Secretly, that was a big accident.
Yeah.
Like we said,
Totally
everybody
believe
go
that.
to the far reaches of the field.
It looked like a big accident.
But then that's cool, right?
Except y'all just stand and pose.
You're right.
You know, like that was an accident. Like we we went into that with a clear idea of what we wanted it to be. Because I love a pre-show. Like I love how it sets an aesthetic, but it is such a waste of time, resources,
it's not even
energy. It's not even judged, but it is. You know,
it sets the expectations.
I'm an adjudicator, you know, for
impression.
a local, marching band and winter guard circuit. There are pre-shows, and I take that into account. It's setting an aesthetic, it's setting a mood, it's setting a vibe that, but if you think about everything that goes into it. So what we were trying to get out of that was, how can we create our theme and our idea with minimal contributions,
right,
and minimal rehearsal time. Like we want to spend an hour done.
And that's all we did.
And that's all we did.
And it was great.
Yeah.
He's just going to let everybody do whatever they wanted to do. Just be here by this time.
Correct.
Be it, like, called it adult drill writing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
Yeah. And even though you say, it's that you say it was a happy accident or whatever, it definitely felt like it was like, okay, we tried this out last year. Let's try it out a slightly different way. And, even when something accidentally happily works out, it's a learning moment, right? You're like, okay, this kind of accidentally, by chance, by happy chance worked out. How do we take that and learn from it so that we can have more happy turnouts that are not quite accidents in the future, right? Or make happy design accidents happen more often, right?
So continuing on as we try to move through the season. Now we're getting ready to go to shows, right? And we're the baby is born, right? It's out
not
there.
Yet.
Well, it's
not till Saturday night.
Not till Saturday. Okay,
but you can get the ultrasound.
We're in preterm labor right now.
Yeah, we're in labor. We know the sex.
Yeah.
We haven't let everybody know the gender. Excuse me.
Yeah.
We know what's going on out there. So we're prepared to offer it to the world. How much of
sleep do I lose? A lot.
I was going to say,
how much anxiety
do you have?
A lot.
A lot. So much.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's probably for all of you guys.
Some of us wear it a lot better than others. I've gotten a lot better at it the last couple of years.
I think it was, my question was what? My question was, when you hear what the judges have to say, right? How much of that goes into the organic process of making adjustments? Because we want to make a great show. We want to put what we want to put on the field, and everybody says that everywhere. They go, oh, as long as we do the best we can do, that's what we can live with, right?
Yeah.
But it's a competition, right?
Let's be real.
Let's be real. Everybody
Correct.
wants to say that because it's nice to say, but we work hard because we want to win hard. That's just what you want to do.
What everyone.
So how
doing.
much of that really does go into, I don't want to say appeasing the judges, but making sure they understand what we're trying to achieve and do?
Yeah. You go into every recording and critique with a grain of salt, knowing that they're an objective eye.
Sure.
I think I learned the most about this activity when I started looking at the judging community as a partner, not an adversary. Like, they don't want you to be terrible.
Sure.
They don't want to watch a bad show. They want to watch a show and give as much feedback. Now, listen, there have been plenty of judges who are out there thinking that they're the Hardy Boys or they're Nancy Drew solving the very best mystery of why something is happening when it is.
Right.
That does exist. And that is a reality that we do have to face. And that's when, I'm going to use the perfect example of building into the Ballad Impact last year in our production. That took so much finessing and discussion and planning and thinking and producing to make it work, because it was a giant sore thumb. Like, it was a thumb that was like smacked with a camera a couple times, and then you burned it, and then it was standing like this at it. Like, it was just, we had to get up on our prop, we had to get off of the prop, and those were two of the banes of our existence. We just had to produce them. We had to keep chipping away and working with different things, with different perspectives from the judging community as they progressed. Try a little something new, get a new little feedback on it, okay, and then adjust if it's good, if it's not. Like, did we hear anything negative this week?
Right.
No, we did better. Okay, cool. All we had to do was turn around and give a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge as we're going to the. You have to sift through the information.
Sure.
Are you hearing it's excellence and performer driven, or are you hearing if it's structural and content driven? Like, you just got to kind of you got to identify what the beast is in the moment with the commentary.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Because I can imagine that if you are getting comments that are very performer driven, like there's an achievement issue,
correct,
right? That's a very different conversation and adjustments than it is we have no idea how you got from point A to point B,
correct,
kind of conversation, right? So let's and I think that's, again, it's important to note, when we talk about these things, and for people out there in TV land that are thinking about drum corps shows and like, why do they do this, especially as shows are beginning to come onto the field, and they go, what is going on the field right now that those things are organically continuing that? Because I have no doubt that every drum corps is doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They're listening to judges, they're getting feedback from people, they're getting crowd response feedback, because I'm guessing that that's part of something that goes into maybe making some minor adjustments here. Is that, are we getting the crowd response that we're looking for in moments that we've built in there for that stuff?
At our friends and family preview that we had 2 weeks ago at this point, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
I watched two things. I watched to make sure, am I watching during the show what I'm supposed to be watching?
Right.
Okay. And what's the audience reacting to? And I was the one to emphatically tell people, I'm like, people were standing up with probably 5 seconds left of the program last year, or 2 weeks ago at Friends and Family. Like, people were really excited and they were engaged. Like, that's the stuff that's important to me right now.
Right.
I was commenting on Ensemble this weekend. I'm like, I'm watching the moments develop right now, not the nuts and bolts, because I want to ensure that the planned effect moments are in place in the program. We can massage all the nuts and bolts stuff later.
Right.
We can make an ugly transition a little bit smoother with some performance quality and, some characterization and some smoothing of things out. Like, that's going to come eventually. I want to make sure that the things that we want to see are the things that were happening right now.
Yeah. I think I've said this for years, even when I wasn't with Reading, for the couple of years I was other places, one of the things, and I think the thing that Reading does better than probably every other drum corps, is having people assigned to a certain piece of the process.
Staying in your lane.
Stay in your lane, exactly. Bring it to the table, talk about it.
Correct.
Fight for your piece, because it's important. That's what we hired you to do, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's somebody at the end, or one or two people that are going to go, this is what we're doing. And everybody goes, okay, I fought for my piece. I'm going to back off now. I'm going to let the other because there's somebody there to do all those things. And, in other organizations I was in, that fluidity is not as fluid.
You got to respect each other. Like, you got to have the trust.
Sure.
Like, I trust that Steve is going to stage the mellophones appropriately in a mellophone feature part.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to trust that Mitch, our color guard caption head, is going to ensure that the choreographed moments for the huge impact are big and colorful in those moments. If we're all trusting in our process and trusting the people on the design team to make those decisions, you got to rely on the subject matter experts in those moments and stay in those lanes. But also, we are all very comfortable with each other. We can say, that's good, but.
Yeah, right.
Did we think about this? Can we do this?
Yeah.
I'm hearing that run in the front ensemble, but I'm not seeing that, visually depicted. What can we do there? Right. So
yeah, I agree. I'm gonna throw. I believe in the power of threes. Always.
Is that a subtle dig?
No,
it's
not a dig at all.
No,
it's
plug.
It's an
plug.
Easter egg.
It's an Easter egg. But I do. I went through my entire career in the military, and you deal with some very emotional human beings. And I always says all the time, I'm like, I bring up things one time because I need to be heard, right? And because I think my point's important. I bring it up a second time because you didn't listen to me the first time. If we're in a conversation, if you turned me down or said, no, you're an idiot or whatever the case may be, I bring it up a second time, I'm like, listen, I just want to reiterate one more time. This is why I believe this, maybe articulated a different way so that, it's maybe, received a little bit differently. And then the third time is just, okay, whatever you want. Right. That's where I go from. And that's how I treat everything. For the most part in life is, because you have to know when to fight your battles. You should fight your battles in an appropriate way and then fight them one more time and then go, okay, well, this isn't mine. I don't have the ultimate say. So I'm just going to go. I put my piece in and I'm going to move on.
They're not battles per se, though.
Well,
like,
battles is a strong word.
At the end of the day, we're tortured artists.
Yeah. Right.
No, and we emotionally invest so much in the programs that we become emotionally connected to the product that when the judging community is telling you that you have an ugly baby, you get upset about that.
Sure, yeah.
Like nobody wants to be told that their baby's ugly. Like you want to put the best product out there. That's why I mentioned earlier, like when I started looking at the judging community as a partner and not an adversary, is when I started having a little bit more success in the activity.
Yeah.
And trusting in your co-people,
right.
Trusting in your membership, training your membership to do what you want them to do is the key in what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think it works for us as well too. Like we trust you guys to do what we know you guys are going to do. And that you have the best interest in our hearts, in our minds, and like you're not going to destroy us and beat us. There were many groups that I've been a part of that I did not believe that in any way, shape, or form that person cared about my well-being in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
They were not.
The activity has evolved in that regard as well.
I completely agree with that. And I think that that is such a positive change for the activity. And you're starting to see so much growth in retention in the activity because, for that reason, I think that staff and administration and people are putting in honest care and pulling their egos out of the way. Like you said, it's your baby. So you're just trying to make this thing. I went through years and years and years where people did not care about the person in the process of making the baby. They just cared about whether or not the show was good. And that's the only thing that they cared about. And then that's a rough thing to be a part of. So, for all you staff designers and people want to get out there into real world things, I think it's super critically important to remember that it's all one big puzzle and you can't just hammer your piece, and believe that every single puzzle piece is going to fit into the one hole you want it to go into.
I've had those situations, I've had those seasons that were not the best for me personally, like I didn't put my best foot forward, as a caption head. And those are some things that I regret and I've had to learn from, and I've had to evolve myself as as an instructor, as a designer, as a creator, and, learn from successes and learn from failures and learn from all the in-betweens too. It's never going to be an easy process. Like there's nothing about this activity that is easy. If you think it's easy, it's going to evolve and it's going to turn itself on its head and it's going to change, and you either evolve with it so it's not easy again, or you get left in the dust.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm at right now. I'm getting left in the dust. I think it's more because I'm old, not ready to evolve. But
I think you go. But I think you specifically, go into it with that mindset of no, I'm interested to learn the new. You have to put yourself in that mindset of yes, this is new, and I'm interested in learning that. Teach me.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, I'm hoping you see that because, I do try to be that way but I am, an old man on the field. So.
You are a curmudgeon.
Yeah, I get curmudgeon occasionally. So I try not to be that as often as I can, but it gets the best of me sometimes. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else that you want to that you were thought about before you came in? Because we talked about what we wanted to talk to you about that you want to say when it comes to designing and preparing the show and kind of putting it out there for the world to see.
So yeah, a little bit because I'm at my point in my career and in my marching arts career now where, people that I've taught, from high school aged are now taking over their own programs and they're having successes and, and they've been asking me questions. And I had a conversation with some of my former students that are now running their own program and having some great successes. They're like, what do we do now? And I'm like, you have to find your voice, your aesthetic. Like what is me isn't going to be something that another drum corps is going to do because this is what I like to put out there. Like this is the aesthetic that has been working for me and I've been involving and I've been learning what design looks like for me and putting it out there. And I'm very fortunate that I have the arena and the avenues and the opportunities to kind of put that creative outlet out there. You know, you have to find your own voice and you have to find your own look and your own want, you know, as a designer. And then you have to train your performers to get there.
Right.
You have to train your performers. Like you can't just ask, you know, you can't just ask a traditionalist group that, you know, just may focus on marching to all of a sudden, you know, do a choreographed bit for a 30-second, you know, moment in their show. If they're not trained to know how to move their body, you know, they're not going to be able to perform that at the level. Then you're going to get mad, and then you're going to, and then there's just going to be push and pull. So you've got to train your performers to perform what you're going to ask them to perform.
Right.
You know, so you've got to find your voice, and you have to identify what that is. You know, I was helping out, you know, I'm helping out a new director of a new program coming out, and I was just unloading on her, you know, stuff that's worked for me in the past, and I was like, I'll stop talking if it's too much for you. She's like, no, keep it going. You can tell me everything that you got, and you know, I'm gonna file it away. So you know, I'm looking forward to see what she in turn does with you know, her experiences in creating her own little program too. You know, and who knows? You know, you got to create your own voice, create your own niche, you know, and have fun doing it. You know, at the end of the day, like, I don't want to say it's fun because this weekend it was not fun. God, it was not fun.
Fun parts.
I had a rough weekend.
I joke.
I had a pretty rough weekend too. I still have like heat rash or something in my chest and back.
I feel like I just got hydrated this morning.
Yeah.
I woke up and I was incredible. I was like, "Wow, my mouth so dry.
Why am I
can't
cramping?"
breathe through
Yeah,
my
right.
nose."
But I was making the joke this week. I was like, God, this all age drum corps thing, it isn't that much fun that I love to do it in my 40s. It just gets easier because I've learned how to do it along the way. I've learned how to do it along the way.
Yeah.
Like I don't carry around a giant field bag because I want to. It's packed filled with everything
all
that
the
I
things
have
you need.
learned
Yeah.
throughout all the years that I'm going to need. So
Yeah.
I showed up with a pop tent and, you know, my giant, you know, cooler, and I was like, I know.
Monster cooler.
Yeah, I know everything that I need this weekend, and it still wasn't enough.
yeah. Everyone's like, why do you have a chair? You're gonna want one.
Yeah, you're gonna.
Oh
the
yeah,
best.
this chair is great. It's great.
Yeah.
That's the best part of DCI all age and being able to do a weekend band thing because you can't really do that on tour.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I bought like a crappy little $15 camping chair from Target. I think it's awesome. I bring that every lunchtime. I'm like, oh, I can sit.
Why
back. I don't have to like
not done this?
sit on the ground around my water jug.
Yep.
Which is what you do, you know, for years. So I did on tour for years.
Yeah, for all you out there thinking about coming over to the all age activity that are watching this right now, chairs. Yeah. Huge selling feature.
You get to sit in like a normal comfy chair.
Pop tents.
Yeah. Oh, the big tents. Yeah. And we bring a cooler onto the field with all the things you could need and just basically
you're gonna water and body armor.
Yeah.
Loaded up. I mean, loaded up.
This is an old DCA now.
Yeah. Hydration.
You got your pack of smokes with you on the field between reps.
Yeah. It's a keg on the 50.
So the most important thing is to find your voice, find your people. And have fun with it. You know, like I genuinely have fun. This is Lou and Lois were chatting about it last week. Like this has been my family for 14 years now.
Yeah.
I've met some of the greatest people in my life. I have been staying at the same house since I have started here and since I started at Reading, and coincidentally it was at her parents' house before that. And they've become some of my best friends and second moms and dads to me. And so it just you find your people in this, so you got to have a little bit of fun with it. Yeah, it's got to be some kind of payoff in the end for it.
And I'd say that's the best part of the all age version of drum corps is that you get so much additional time. Yeah, you know, you go on tour, you're shoved together with people, and you spend a very intense 90 days together, and then they filter to the winds of whatever it is they're going to do with life, and you kind of lose track of those people unless you're very close with them, and then they're gone. With our activity, we get to just embrace people more openly, I think, and with more time and everything else, and they do become family and they become friends and all those other things too. You know, I've grown very fond and appreciative of you over the years.
Thanks.
The last 3 years.
You were a little scary in 09.
You know, that's right. I forgot we marched together.
You were a little scary.
Oh
yeah. That came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was a little scary.
Big loud guy who just came in out of nowhere.
Yeah.
This military guy, right?
Learned the entire show in a weekend.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah. So I think, I mean, that's great, Nick. If you have anything else you want to talk about, like we're pretty much there. I immensely appreciated the conversation, you coming all the way up here and talking to us today. I hope that people out there in the regular world kind of got a little something about the idea of how these things, and if you're ever interested in it, this is good information for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got one more
Oh,
small question.
okay. Go ahead.
I'm
No,
gonna do a
no,
short
no.
one. It's
Yeah.
gonna be short. We can because we want to do on it. But I'm
Yes
just
or no?
curious. I want to know, just rattle off some favorites design wise, favorite shows, right? Just to learn a last little button on
Here at
Well,
Reading specifically,
anywhere.
Doesn't matter. Drum
Or-
corps in general.
or even Winter Guard. You know,
Ooh, yeah. It's a good one too.
in drum corps, the show that remains, there's two specifically that really kind of like got me, like Cadets 96 remains to be one of my
American
absolute
West.
favorite shows.
I love that show.
Yeah, I love that show.
Yeah.
Blue Devils 96, the gangster show.
The gangster show.
It's one of my favorites. And then Cavaliers 98 is the show that made me want to march the Cavaliers.
Oh, yeah.
The Traditions show. It was their anniversary.
That's right.
It was the first time I felt seen when I saw, like, I'd been watching them since 96 as well, but 98 was the first time I'm like, that's the kind of color guard I want to be in. Like, I felt seen, being a guy in color guard, especially like in the late 90s, like coming right out of high school, like it was unknown to me that there was an entire drum corps. And back then there was two, that were, all male drum bugle corps. And I got such it was such a unique experience to march in an all, male presenting drum corps, that it just was a neat, special experience. And I felt seen when I first saw the Cavaliers. And so 98 remains to be like one of the, turning point shows for me. Winter Guard, I am a huge fan. This is a high school. There's two high schools that really like solidified it for me in the 90s. It was Bishop Kearney High School and Center Grove High School.
Okay.
I've heard of both of them. But...
Yep. They were both powerhouses. There was one year they both had the same music. They both did New Era Dance in 1996. Back to back, they were first and second.
Wow.
Complete different shows though.
Interesting.
That's so cool to see though.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Bishop Kearney's from New York. I in fact got to work with their designer at Field of View, which is a Winter Guard that I work with. He did our staging last couple of years, so I got to like pick his brain about like the inner workings of one of my favorite Winter Guards ever. So yeah, I've been very blessed to be introduced to a wonderful era of color guard, like coming up in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
Between drum corps and Winter Guard. So
that's awesome.
Really influential programs.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
Just
that was the
thanks.
last
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. No, that's a great question. I don't know why I didn't think I'd ask that. So, all right. Well, I guess we'll wrap things up. Nick, again, thank you so much for coming in. If you're out there, you appreciated the show, you like what Nick had to say, even if you didn't like what Nick had to say, you should still hit subscribe. You should still hit the like. For all of my color guard friends out there that may have watched this entire thing, we know that we talk about hornline stuff all the time. We're trying to branch out.
They're Myrons.
Yeah, they were the Myrons. We do, but we try to branch out every now and again to bring some color and some pizzazz onto the show. So we hope that you enjoyed it, and if you have some ideas of other people, the designers or other people who have been influential to you, throw them down in the comments. We'd love to, because we don't branch out that often, because it's just not our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Who are the great people out there that are designing great color palettes, who are doing great work in the color guard community. And
you're using words like great. I'm getting over.
I know it's we'll use awesome.
I'm just Nick. That's
awesome.
It. I'm just Nick.
You're great Nick.
Great Nick.
But great Uncle Nick.
Oh,
but if get down in the comments and share with us. We'd love to hear who they are, figure out what they're doing, maybe take a look at some of their shows and kind of immerse ourselves in some of that stuff. And anybody else that's watching and commenting too, you get to maybe spread your group's your group's, what am I thinking of? Show. There it is.
Yeah.
Your group's show around. That's a good edit.
Can't always read your mind.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's a dank space to be in.
Yeah. No idea. So anyway, that is everything. Thanks again, Nick.
Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Off cycle.
Great.